Okay, we are on. I would like to welcome you to this edition of Perseus Conversations. We have joining us today, we have Alex Leonhart, is that?
Leonhart, yeah.
Leonhart. And Jake, people should know Jake Green from the Mystery College. Okay, welcome, guys. Welcome. Nice to
Thank
have
you.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm moving
Um,
away from aliases. I'm just going to be using my normal last name from now on. So Jake Sen.
Jake's in. Okay, Jake's in. All right.
He's
Um,
inspired. He's inspired to just, come out of the closet.
Jake 007. All right, cool.
Love it.
Let's basically this edition for viewers of this is I'm excited about what Jake and Alex are doing. Yeah, and I really wanted to share this with the subscribers to the YouTube channel because I think this is really, really useful what they're doing. And they have some unique experiences as well that they're bringing to the table. So before we get into it, let's go with Alex. Could you give us a brief introduction before we go deeper in the future?
Right. So my name is Alex Leonhart, and I am from the Philippines. That's a small archipelago in Southeast Asia, peopled exclusively by green-skinned aliens. I'm not green-skinned because I'm different. That's a joke. No, I'm from the Philippines, and I was a former professor of comparative religious studies in a local university within my city. I have a degree in philosophy and comparative religious studies. I specialize in these specific subjects, and one of my vested interests, or my personal hobbies, if you will, is anthropology and sociology. So these specific subjects have influenced the perspectives that I have had with respect to magic working and spirituality by and large. The reason being that when I was still extremely active in the local outreach communities and in local NGOs, I was fortunate and or unfortunate enough to have been apprenticed to a local folk healer. And through her training and my innate curiosity for all things that go bunk in the night, I've developed an interest in everything that goes bunk in the night. So there's that. There's really not much to it. Overall, my experience in academia allows me to provide a more pseudo intellectual take on certain subject matters. Um, and it allows me to provide some insight, which none of you should listen to, into certain aspects of magic, spirituality, religion that some people tend to overlook because they view it from a more personal instead of a more academic background. Yeah, pretty much that's it.
Wow. Awesome introduction. Okay, let's go over to you, Jake, and remind us because you are. I always think you're too humble because you have so much experience. Like, let it out.
Sure. Yeah, so I started getting into this type of work in my early teens, and getting into meditation, esoterica, Reiki, and other types of practices. I grew up in a largely agnostic household, but my mother had a lot of spiritual practices that she herself was into and was very sensitive. So she kind of shared with me a lot of things when we'd go out in walks in nature, right? That I then picked up, like kind of like pointing out, oh, there's a nature spirit over there, Jake. And then I go over, I look, and then whoa, lo and behold. So then that kind of unveiled and enveloped a lot of unique experiences I had growing up, and yeah, so I grew up in environments where some things like that kind of were just a little bit more normal than not. And then looking back in my family history, looking back even to like the coat of arms on my mother's side, there's a lot of magical elements on our coat of arms that indicate that we were involved with alchemy, that we were involved with um, like making spagyrics, not spagyrics, but like a Spanish-esque version of them. So like, and also astrology. There's some astrological things in our coat of arms. So there's a lot of family history there of having a bit more sensitivity and bandwidth to elements that are out of the norm. So I met Alex through trying to find folks online who might be interested in esoterica or occultism or what have you. Just kind of like doing a wide search online. And then once we got in touch, it was kind of like a pretty instant click where we're just buddy after that for a long time and getting along great. So we've been close friends for almost 5 years now.
5 years, yeah, 5 years.
Yeah, and we've worked on a number of projects together. He's been on the back end of a lot of courses, and we also published a couple of mini courses to a few other platforms just as feelers. And then and also he also helped develop the mystery college name for the the organization that we run. We originally were thinking Invisible College, right? Which owes its name to figures like Isaac Newton, Goethe, Picasso. Like a lot of people, it's like the idea of being an academic but not having an academic institution. It's like a quote unquote invisible college where people can still be the top of their fields and ideas can coalesce and spread, but it's more in the fields of commerce and the public field of thoughts.
It was the Invisible College was also technically it started out as the forerunner of the Illuminati. Everybody knows who the Illuminati is, or what they think the Illuminati is. But the name was taken, so we're like, you know what? Let's just go for a mystery college instead, because domain name's taken. But if we're not, if it weren't, then Invisible College it would have been.
Yeah.
Wow! What a great intro. I mean, that's it. I mean, without even talking about the other things that I know about you, Jake, that's what an amazing family background to have. That just sets you up amazingly well. Gosh, and you got a coat of arms as well.
Yeah.
How cool is that? All right, well, thank you guys. All right, so because I want to remind people of how interesting you guys are. Okay, so let's dive deeper. I know you both got more to share. So, Alex, the last time we spoke, I was really impressed with your knowledge on all these things. So, can you go a little bit deeper into your approach to magic? And maybe you mentioned before your teacher there in the Philippines. Maybe some of that, and you're very knowledgeable about the Vedic stuff as well.
Well, I would be remiss if I said that this system that we have in the works is how I perform magic. It is not. This is I intend for this to be more of a theoretical exercise intended to revitalize magical tradition in the West as it should have been, and not how it has been influenced due to an assortment of a number of factors, socio-economical and global and what have you. But the primary basis of my magic is rooted in Hinduism, specifically in the Shaiva school of Hinduism, specifically in the Vamachara tradition, that is the left-hand path tradition of Shaivism. So while I may appear to you as the well-dressed and quasi-well-mannered monkey in a suit, I am actually deep down a rabid mountain person who lights fires in the middle of the night or in the early mornings and screams to the sky calling down the elder gods. And I do not say this as a joke. It sounds like a joke, but it is not. I joke about everything else except my practice. And the root of Vamachara tradition is the philosophy of accepting non-duality. And I don't say this as in a more Bardonian sense of non-duality. I mean this from a Sanskrit perspective of non-duality. So in Hinduism, there are dualistic schools, Dvaita schools, and then there are Advaita schools, non-dual schools. The Dvaita schools believe that everything in life is dual in nature. There is the real and the unreal, and then there is the transcendental and the gross or the base. The non-dual conceptualizations of these Indian philosophers believe that there is no difference between the real and unreal, the gross and the transcendental, the good and the evil. Because if you differentiate between what you perceive as good and what you perceive as evil, you're not differentiating anything at all. You're creating demarcations for what is exactly the same thing. Now, as a philosophical exercise, Advaita is quite difficult. As a magical exercise, it is even more so. However, it gets a bad rep, if you will, within less knowledgeable, you know, fields, specifically because it contains tropes and or implements that most individuals would consider disturbing or morbid. A good example of this being that and I've told Jake this before. I am the keeper, that is to say, the inheritor of a kapala. A kapala is a bowl or a plate made from the upper cranial cavity of a human head. That is this part right here. So you take a skull from wherever you source skulls at, the river, a cemetery, your local Walmart, whichever, and you trepan the thing right round. And this vessel that you have is one of the primary tools that you use for ritual. Now, a lot of people will believe, what is this? Is this like Satanism? Is this black magic and whatnot? And it's fun to make them believe that way, because that way they leave me alone, and I can focus more on what those things exactly are rather than what those things are to the layperson. But I am not out here to teach left hand path Shaivism. My background is in left hand path Shaivism. Um, the primacy of my magical working is rooted in that, alongside local Filipino folkloric herbalism. But my job here is to try and offer a more neutral, a more verifiable, logical approach to magic that is completely stripped down of all of the socio-religious and ethno-centric trappings that has influenced magic since the Victorian and the Edwardian eras.
Mm. Wow. Perfect. That's. I think that lets people know exactly where you're coming from and the depth of experience that you have. Thank you, Alex. Jake, obviously we know you from the things you've done on your YouTube channel, Mystery College, as a Franz Barden student, having long time in kind of retreat settings in Southeast Asia, practicing. So can you give us a little bit more about yourself? Because I mean, my thinking is, I don't think you've ever said, but my thinking is, you when you put it all together, you had months and months and months, if not years, in a retreat setting, surrounded by practitioners, surrounded by high-level teachers, doing nothing but practice. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, you're correct. You're correct. I've spent an immense amount of time at in-person retreats, whether it's Vipassana or being out in Thailand with Mark Rasmus, or I've studied several hundred hours with Bob Smith as well in person. So they're my colleagues, my friends, mentors, and it's been amazing to be immersed with folks and to be able to feel the gravity of these practices, and have had the opportunity to practice with nearly hundreds of individuals in person, with also body exercises and routines. So I can validate the practices and whether it's working or not. Right. There's an element of groupthink when there's an in-person live course that Alex and I are also been discussing and deliberating on how does one evaluate whether something or experience is subjectively arising out of groupthink, or how do we know that it's objectively happening without that influence. But my sense or my understanding from having had these experiences is that these working with these particular individuals, like Bob Smith or Mark Rasmus, the groups that they have as little of an element of groupthink as
Mm.
possible, from having from having attended other types of workshops or retreats or spent time with other teachers. The mechanics are there and they just work. Um, and so a lot of my practice is influenced by spending an immense amount of time with those individuals. Also, as well as spending time with Alex over the last 5 years, where he's also taught me many things from different traditions. One thing Alex hasn't shared yet is that he's actually has backgrounds and initiations not only from not only pan Indian systems, but also a few systems from Africa and few other types of initiations too. And so not only does he have an academic understanding of this, but also he is a polyglot and speaks many languages and can also read a lot
Not
of.
that many.
Not that many.
Not that many. Not that many. I mean,
How many, Alex?
give or take 6.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
No, it's not that many, because in a country that has approximately 47 languages, 6 is just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow,
Hmm.
very so much information, so much knowledge. Wow, so that is also, I suppose, with your history, Jake, and then having all this additional information, that's all helped in what you and Alex are now kind of creating.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So so I'm coalescing the things I've learned, having spent combined thousands of hours with Mark Rasmus, with Bob Smith of 60 Skills, and also like having had so many like multi-hour long calls with Alex over the last 5 years, where we discuss these things, and we've also worked on different curriculum or courses, and even developed like the frame and structure of, say, the Mystery College. um, it finally occurred to us that, like, hey, why don't we just like tandem teach these things and get these things out to the world? Because we've been talking about it, we've been doing it in some scale for years, but now the whole picture is together, and we're ready for the next thing.
Perfect. Thanks, Jake. Well, that leads us perfectly into in deliberation and explanation. So I think this was really interesting as a can I call it a foundational structure or a
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
of what comes next, a clarity of everything that comes after, and also a way to keep it clear and pure so that it doesn't become confused. So, could you guys go into this and explain this in fairly simple terms for the audience?
Yeah, so Jake?
Oh, after you.
Okay. So in the document that we've sent you in deliberation, it is most decidedly and assuredly a deliberation on the principles and the core tenets of what we were trying to advocate for. And what we're trying to advocate for here is what I would like to call Concordianism. Now, sounds like a sounds like a fancy word for something. It really isn't. Concordianism is based on or named after the Roman goddess of harmony, which is Concordia, based off of another name for her, which is Harmonia. Now, Harmonia slash Concordia is in direct opposition to, or the exact opposite of, the goddess of chaos, Discordia, also known as Eris. And not Ares, the war god, but Eris, the agent of discord, the goddess of discord. So the exact opposite of that is harmony. Now, there is a sociological philosophy called Concordianism, which advocates that in order for human society to advance to their greatest potential, human society must learn to cooperate within the scope of one another's capacities. It is not advocating for a unified society. It is not advocating for a singular society. And it is not advocating for a monolithic society. What it is advocating is a cooperative society. And so we take this philosophical principle and we apply this similarly into a esoteric scope, whereby we take practices that have been done for hundreds of thousands of years within the collective sphere of all of human history and condense it into those aspects which can be found concordantly across
Mm.
various human traditions, and to strip it away of anything which is related to culture, religion, identity, or any of those things, which, I mean, to be perfectly honest, sociologically, culture unites a specific group of people, but it divides that specific group of people to
Mm.
everybody else. They're a separate thing. And those people out there are also a separate thing. This is a very human thing. This is nothing to be ashamed of. And in a highly politicized environment such as the Western world today, there is a lot of talk about cultural appropriation or the taking of certain ideas and whitewashing these ideas. And as someone who is very active in what some people would describe as the quote unquote woke community. I mean, I don't look woke, but I probably am if people are calling me that. I don't know. But these points, these talking points, have become a significant hindrance to the capacity of the human individual to see their immediate other not as separate from themselves. It's creating a divide, and the divide occurs within the sociological sphere. It occurs in academia. It occurs in religion, and it occurs even in the practice of magic. There's gatekeeping all throughout over a disparate number of practices that, if you really took a deeper look, you would find analogs and parallels and similarities all across the globe. And so Concordianism is our attempt to collate, synthesize, and codify these similitudes, and to create a practice that is neutral, approachable, reliable, logic based, analysis oriented, and readily verifiable and repeatable. So that even if you are an atheist or an agnostic, or if you believe in Cthulhu or whatever it is that you want to believe in, you are able to do these practices and benefit from the same things that you would find if you went to an ashram, or if you went to a retreat, or if you became a monk, or if you became a hesychast, or whichever it is, that
Mm.
drives your boat. It's more of a it's more of a how shall I say this? A multicultural attempt at magic minus
Mm.
the cultural baggage. I think that's what describes it best.
Mm. Anything that can get in the way, that can cause divide, that can take your attention away from the actual thing itself,
It has to go.
laid
Yeah.
bare. Wow, great explanation. Okay, anything to add to that, Jake?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's a few key elements that we're using in helping strip away some of the elements that make it more difficult to perceive, say, historical practices as they were presented in their time. Is we're seeing things not through an anachronistic lens. In other words, most practices that are magical or things that anything anthropological in the past, how modern humans tend to look at the past is through our distinctly modern eyes, mindset,
Mm.
and contextual understanding, our moralities. So we're not looking to the past or looking through any magical systems or anthropological ritual systems through an anachronistic lens. We're distinctly looking at it through the context of which the people lived. Um, Looking at the history of the geography of the region, looking at what materials they had, and also looking at where they were developed, how they were developed technologically with medicine. All these types of things contextually give rise to an understanding of where someone was at in their mind when they created a grimoire, or when they created a magical system, or when they were were contextualizing these things for the audience of their times. There's a Buddhist concept called of expedient means, which teaches us that all these teachings in their given times were taught for the viewers and listeners of that time period more often than not. So looking at it from that lens, we're able to go and have a closer, more accurate look at historical practices, both from a comparative religion lens, which is where Alex and my academic backgrounds are. That's what we majored in. And then also from the practicum lens, where we can actually pathwork some of these practices, either in how they were shared in their integrity, or we can also look at the component elements that make up the said ritual and reverse engineer it as closely as possible, whilst also not completely inconveniencing ourselves of normal amenities, right? Because not everyone has, a chicken or a chicken that can cut their throat, or drive a lion's mane, or to use an ounce of gold for some ritual. Like, those things are not readily accessible, but there are.
I wish I had an ounce of gold.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some of those ingredients might not be. Where am I going to get that from? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know where to get a chicken and I know where to get a lion's mane, but I don't know how to get an ounce of gold.
Yeah. Drawbacks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that said, we're also as part of Concordianism. There's the core component of Concordianism.
One second.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a core aspect of Concordianism where we have a on-demand course where you can go through the Concordian practices. It's in a Socratic form where Alex leads with questions, and then I'm the one who's going through the practices and sharing my feelings, experiences, hindrances in real time, so that people can check in with themselves and practice along in the group.
It prevents cognitive bias. It shows people in real time that the systems and the processes that we're doing is not some silly little mind trick. Because I come from a country where there are a lot of charismatic preachers, very, culty religious leaders and whatnot. And I know how groupthink works. I have analyzed groupthink at length. I have also analyzed how people can be so easily misled, provided that there is peer pressure, and provided that they desire an end to which they are given the illusion that they can achieve. So if we place it in an environment where you're able to determine that not everything that is being presented to you is, something that works instantaneously, but rather is something that builds up, or something that you can either verify, or deny, or somewhere in between, then it showcases that the system itself is rooted in logic. It's not rooted in blind faith, superstition, hypnosis. And there really is no better way to go about a magical system in a world where everyone is convinced that they're Gandalf the Grey or some other transcendental human being than to show how it works, stripped of all preconceived notions.
Absolutely. There, and people can verify, and they can, as you said before, repeat it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, that leads us, because obviously we've talked about an introductory curriculum of a few lessons, but also you've got your the live cohort courses, quite a selection that you're looking at doing as well. Do you guys want to talk about a few of those? Because I think these are going to be very, very exciting for people.
Absolutely. And this will be, it is exciting theoretically, but once they're the ones doing the practice, they will find that it is quite something of a bore for starters, especially because they're used to the, if I may use the terminology, the get rich quick scheme of how magic is presented and marketed in their respective milieus. But this is a foundational course which encompasses magic as a whole. And when we say magic as a whole, we mean internal and external magic. And this can be applied to any and all systems of pre existing magic. That means you can be a Concordian and be a Vodun at the same time. You can be a Concordian and be a Catholic at the same time, although that might not sit well with your local priest. Um, but it's a system that fits all, a system that applies for all, and a system that is designed for all. That is very commie of me to say. I'm sorry. Um, Anywho, the concept of Concordianism, as a little introduction, I would like to set the stage, if you will, as to why we believe that this is necessary. Now, in order for people to actually understand precisely why this is needed, I would like to bring to everyone's attention the fact that what we call the Western, I say this as liberally as I can, and I do not mean any offense to individuals of the Western mold of mind or who are located in the West. Now, I would like to say as a disclaimer that in spite of the fact that I am a Southeastern individual, I am either fortunately and or unfortunately so thoroughly westernized thanks to globalization that there really is no difference between me and the average individual that you meet at a Taco Bell in the United States, with the exception of the fact that I have never consumed anything from Taco Bell. That being said, the Western uh, mode of mind when it comes to magic, if we are being perfectly honest about it, is this hodgepodge of systems culled from different religious traditions across the world. And the reason why it exists in this vacuous space of semi neutrality, but also this flailing and futile attempt at something close to universalism, is because the early magical practices that make up the cornerstone of what we call the Western tradition as it is understood today. And by Western tradition, I mean to say the Golden Dawn, the works of Crowley, Blavatsky, White, tarot cards, all of these things. And I'm going to add to the mix here Franz Barden, because you hear his name often. Um, these were all byproducts of a specific time period where the Western world became strongly disillusioned by established religion, and they were seeking some other kind of placeholder for a faith that they had, that they wanted to retain, but which was going nowhere. And it did not start, mind you, with the Thelema, with all of these secret societies and organizations and whatnot. This began far, far, far earlier than that specific time period. This has roots going all the way back to the middle of the 1600s, even as far back as the Renaissance, if we're being honest, up until the height of just shy of the French Revolution. And I will explain as in as condensed a manner as I can. The Western world has always been cosmopolitan. That is part and parcel of its collective identity. It defines itself as Western. It believes itself to be cohesive as a culture, as a society, and as a people, as a milieu. But it is not cohesive in the sense of true cohesion. It is an amalgam of different practices that have been sourced and picked from all of the places that they have either assimilated or conquered, or which they have built alliances and adopted certain aspects of certain cultures. It's complicated. History is complicated. Um, and so, with this amalgamation of an assortment of practices that dates back to the time when they decided, let's make large boats and see if the world isn't flat. Already you had innumerable practices from different parts of the world that were slowly being introduced into the Western mold of mind. And they were already adapting that in their own respects back then. Um, it may surprise a lot of individuals to know, for example, that the notorious spirit worker John Dee, which was, if my memory serves me right, was the official court astronomer and sorcerer for Queen Elizabeth I, made mention of a specific entity which would later be codified into the Western demonology systems called the Goetia. This specific entity he described was a pot-bellied elephant person. That's the Hindu god Ganesh,
Mm.
India. And they didn't quite exactly land in India then, but they did conduct trade extensively with other parts of the world. So they knew what Persia was. They knew what the Middle East was. They understood that because William Shakespeare, of course, in his the Moor of Venice, Othello, the Moor of Venice, they understood that, and the concept of the Crusades is very fresh in the memory of the Elizabethan psyche. So things travel, things migrate from one area to another. Ideas are shared, but only to a certain extent. It's shared in a half-hearted way, in an incomplete way. And so the ones who receive this information also codify it in a half-hearted way. It's there, but not quite. It's incomplete. And this has been the problem with Western tradition at large. It's there, but it's not quite complete. It's a Frankenstein, you know, creature culled from various parts of different sociological and cultural corpses, all sewn together and electrified into a living being that doesn't quite understand what it is, but knows that it should exist.
Mm.
And the problem with that is it creates a lot of confusion for the intrepid practitioner. Because when they encounter things like, oh, I'm going to perform energy work, and the system that you're choosing to do this energy work is the chakra system from Hinduism. You're not a Hindu. You don't understand how the chakras are viewed from a Hindu perspective, but you do the work anyway. And then from that, you shift into suddenly this working with the planetaries, Kabbalah. That's Judaic. And unless you're a Jew, and if you're a Jew, you probably wouldn't do this kind of magic. You do your own kind of magic, which is gematria, proper Judaic Kabbalah. But I digress. You go into the system, you jump from one culture to another, and you expect this one thing to enmesh with this other thing perfectly. And then you hit roadblocks. Like, why isn't it working the way that these writers
Mm.
say it should? Probably because the writers that wrote it down theoretically. They didn't understand the complete context of what they were writing. And I don't see this as something discriminatory or condemnatory of these individuals. I would like to remind everyone that Western magic is a byproduct of its time. It was a byproduct of a culture of people who realized exactly how large the world was and how there was more than one way of viewing the world and more than one way of experiencing God or spirit or what have you. And they found some truth and some credence and some value in these beliefs. And they wanted to apply that into their own daily lives because there was something missing. And
Mm.
so they created a synthesis. It was a half baked synthesis, yes, but it was an attempt at a synthesis nevertheless. Unfortunately, anything that is only half done or half baked doesn't quite cut it to be Michelin star material, if you will. So, because of these inherent pitfalls in the practice, we now have individuals who do energy work based on the Chinese concept of qi, or the Japanese concept of ki, or the Indian concept of prana. But they just shift from one thing to another. They employ this thing using this specific terminology for that specific word that doesn't quite, mean what it should mean. And they think that they're doing magic. And then when they encounter and or experience individuals from living traditions, from those aspects of society that have not been as thoroughly commodified as their own society, then they're like, oh, why is their system of magic, more cohesive than ours? Why are they so gatekeepery about their magic? The answer is simple. One society has had plenty of time to hyperfixate on how they do things. The other part of society has spent a lot of time trying to make different parts from different things work into one cohesive whole. And so, where Concordianism comes into play is, if this is a problem in Western magic, and this is the unification or the cohesion of practice is a default or a given in a lot of non-Western magic. Because when I say Eastern, I'm creating a dichotomy here. African magics are not Eastern, and yet they are exceedingly cohesive. The magics that are performed in the Pacific Islanders, for example, those are not technically Asian. They're Polynesian, but it's also exceedingly cohesive. The magic of the Maoris and the Native Americans, that's not Eastern, but it's also exceedingly cohesive. If cohesion is the goal, but confusion is what is here now, Concordianism attempts to take all of the elements that people find confusing, difficult, and or simply inaccessible due to any number of factors, and to consolidate all of those things to create a unified system that is accessible to all, that is not barred by the trappings of culture and the limitations of language and even socio-cultural milieu, and to
Mm.
hopefully redefine the Western system of magic into what is truly a cosmopolitan system of magic. Something that the West can say, you know what, we made this. This
Mm.
is international. This is Mr. International, Mrs. International,
Mm.
or X
Wow.
X
Wow.
International.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, my goodness, that's a really good explanation. So, to say with what you have coming with that said, with what you have coming for the live cohort classes, um, and this, I don't know whether this is a wrong question or not, but where would you be if someone is asking, okay, that's good, it's going to solve these problems, but where would the system seek to take the student? Like what, like people might say, okay, what's it focusing on? Is it energy work? Is it meditation? Is it evocation?
It's all
I
of
know
the
I'm,
above.
it's all
It's
of it.
all of the above. So there are certain aspects of Western magic that are internal and external. The same can be said for all forms of magic, regardless of their locale. So we begin with a foundation, internal work. We build the foundation from the inside out. Because to use a, how shall I say this? To use a anatomy and physiology analogy or concept, you know, you can be the most buff, the most chiseled physique and everything, but if you are ill on the inside because of a hereditary disease or an infection or what have you, you're gonna lose the physique that you're building outside, right?
Mm.
So we start from within. We start with internal work. We start with energy work. We start with energy manipulation. We start with understanding how energy works within the various concepts of energy as it is deliberated over by different traditions, and then put it into a concept where we view energy in as neutral a way as possible. Because here's a little snap in front of the face. To this very day, a lot of Western magical practitioners don't even have a term for energy that they can say, you know what, this is a Western term. Like, how would you call energy? Most people would be like, oh, it's ki, it's chi, it's prana. Those are not Western terms. Those are
All
called from
borrowed.
other
Yeah.
places: Chinese, Japanese, Indian. What is the term for that concept within the Western mind? I mean, any professional sorcerer, any Albus Dumbledore can chime in and give their take, but I am willing to bet an arm, a leg, and my non-existent adopted baby brother that they can't, because there hasn't been any, not in 100 years.
Mm.
So we're going to have to go back, and if we can't find terminologies going back, then we have to create new terminologies for the here and now, so that in future generations, we won't have individuals from Nebraska saying that the concept of energy that they're working with is chi. And if you ask them, do you like to eat xiaolong bao? They will say, what the hell is xiaolong bao?
Yeah, understanding. Mm. Okay, so going forward, we've also given a whole host of the other document that you guys kindly shared with me. Um, there is a whole host of potential live courses on there. Um, so, do you want to, guys, and Jake or yourself, go over a few of those of just because this already is, as a foundation, is epic. But there's more, and I want people to realize that there's this is very, very thorough what Jake and Alex have put together in terms of these courses, and that they're going to be sharing over the next months and throughout this year. Because you've got everything from the base systems, you've got how it aligns to Barden's work, you've got all of these kind of things. You've got the levels. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. But before I begin, and I will not speak for Jake here, because the thing with Mystery College that that should be understood by a lot of people is that we are not a cult. We are not, a bunch of people who all believe in the same thing. I would like to view the Mystery College as something more akin to the ancient Greek agora, which is essentially an open forum where people of different inclinations and proclivities and philosophical outlooks all decide to band together, discuss, talk, exchange ideas, debate, and probably throw a live chicken or two just to spite everybody else for fun. I'm talking about you, Diogenes. You are the OG. So my primary role in the Mystery College is I'm your resident. I'm your resident comparative religious studies person. I'm not going to say expert because I don't want to put on airs. There are a lot of things that I still don't know. So it is my responsibility to teach those courses from a sociological and anthropological and an historical perspective in as neutral a way as possible. I would also like to say that I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, a Bardonian. I do not actively work with Bardon systems. I am familiar with them, and I've read them, but it's not my system. It's not my practice. To that, I leave, the talk of Bardon and all of that to those people who do live, the Bardonian way, if you will. That's for them. I don't want to take on anything that I absolutely, have no how do I say this? It's not really it's something that I don't personally adhere to. That's a better way of putting it. But since we are doing a compare and contrast when it comes to a lot of the courses in Mystery College, you will hear, or you can expect to hear, a lot of comparison points, not just with like, okay, this thing here is comparable to this specific system here. um, it goes even as far back as, this specific religion evolved into this specific religion because of these specific factors, and therefore their magics are done in this specific way. And so the courses in the Mystery College will be more similar to um, your typical anthropology class than it will be about, trying to focus, energy. I mean, we will still have those things. Absolutely, we will still have those things. We will have practical magic presented to our audience, because what's the point of theoretical magic? There is no such, there's no point if it's all theory. However, we would like to um, remind people as early as now that there's two sections to the Mystery College. There's the anthropological, historical, sociological understanding of magic, which we would we're working on a title for this. I would personally like to call it the history of magic, but that that's the title of a novel, a best-selling novel, so that might land me in hot water. And then there's also the element of the practical aspects of magic, and they can choose either of these courses, or they can work with both of these systems
Okay.
simultaneously.
So if someone could possibly come at it just from, I'm thinking, you know what, I don't really, maybe they're thinking, I don't know enough about this stuff. I really should improve my understanding, and they can just go down that track.
Yeah,
Okay, good. And
absolutely.
they can dip in. Can they, once they're on that track, is that like, can they then come back over to the practical side?
Absolutely. The understanding of the history of magic precipitates the understanding of magic itself, in that it is similar to how, if and when you understand yourself, you understand the reasons for why you do what you do. So following that psychological anecdote, if we understand what magic was to a certain group of people or a certain cultural milieu, then it follows without saying that if and when we are engaged with the practice of magic, because of prior understanding from a purely theoretical perspective, it will not be so difficult to apply what we understand into a more practical approach.
Wow, wow, brilliant. So this is all coming. This is all coming in. What's the timeline for this, guys?
Jake?
Yeah, so we'll be starting some live courses, some feeler courses in the coming week, where we'll just have like a like a Zoom link, a Google Meets link, and just a feeler, so we can communicate with folks and then get live feedback as to how we can modify the curriculum to meet their wants, their needs, whilst also keeping integrity of the greater mission of what we're doing. So we have a number of live courses that are also coming up for students that they can attend, all from Vedic empowerments all the way to uh, invocation practices to a comparative religious analysis of the Franz Barton framework to Vedic Shaivism. As Alex was initiated in the system, and from our private conversations, from our conversations with Dr. Shriram, uh, the, things just match. Many, if not most things, match up 1-to-1 with between these systems. However, because the cohesion of the Shaivism tradition, especially the ones that Alex is a part of, the one that Shriram is a part of, they're distinct ones that they're part of, but they themselves are completely whole and succinct. There's so many little details and pathways and path workings that can be added or recontextualized that just simply are not available in Western vernacular or in any Western books, because they're not there. They're not available. They're in Sanskrit, for example. But Alex is phenomenal at transliterating things from Sanskrit into English. And he actually, for many years, worked as a translator, translating scriptures into one of the native tongues in the Philippines, for example. So he is very talented at this. He's very talented at distilling ideas in a way that's comprehensible. So one of our objectives with this live course that where we go through the first and second book through the Franz Barton framework is to distill all these pieces that are from Sanskrit into the greater Barton framework, and to really enhance it and fill in some gaps. So
And
we
to
have also
hopefully,
that. Please, Alex.
and to hopefully, create words for these things, quite literally, that, an average practitioner of magic from Western and Westernized parts of the world can confidently say, you know what, this is my word for it. This is a new thing, and this is a very welcome thing. With that, hopefully, we will begin to facilitate. Jake.
Wow.
Yes, absolutely. And that being said, there's also other things that we're working on. One thing is we'll be teaching people yoga. We'll be teaching people a small portion of the yoga we'll be teaching is typical asanas, your downward dog, and stretching, some mudras, some bandhas and such. But the vast majority of the time in the classes will be dedicated to the other seven limbs of yoga, things like morality, concentration exercise, samadhi. So we're working on our yamas, our niyamas, our
The,
dhyana, and all
the,
these things, and
the
cohesively.
philosophy of yoga, essentially.
Yes, philosophy of yoga, right? But there's also going to be practicum in that, where we'll be practicing things, and we'll be also be practicing some. So if you've ever wanted to dive deeper into yoga texts, this is going to be a fantastic course to join. And if you ever felt like that there was something behind yoga, but your local, yoga teacher with Lululemon pants and drinking Starbucks, maybe that didn't seem to really cut the fit or feel like it was aligned, then we're hoping to bring things back into alignment and make these things readily accessible and digestible, and bridge into further things too if you want. Like if you want to then pursue Sanskrit, we'll have the resources and guidelines to plug you in so you can actually get initiated into that. And that goes further into another live course we have in the works where we'll actually be giving a initiation into in Alex's tradition of Shaivism available
Wow.
online through our live courses, so that maybe you can't go to India, maybe you can't go to meet Alex in person at this time, but that there is a place where you can get real empowerments, real practices from a cohesive tradition, and so we have that in the works as well. We also have a live course series where we'll be going into we'll be going pan-religious, pan-spiritual systems, doing path working with individual spirits through a live class, individual spirits, muses, guides, principles of different traditions, whether that's your Western European mythology, Norse mythology, Egyptian spirit, the Egyptian gods, African gods, South American, or syncretic Catholic gods as well. Like when people mix local gods with the Catholic saints, for example, which is syncretically happened all throughout South America and the rest of the world. So we'll be able to work with Mesoamerican gods as well. And then also being able to work with the pan-Indian systems that Alex is initiated in. So yeah, and so one thing we're working on with that specifically is making sure that we're not just working with any old hodgepodge spirit or from this plane or that plane and or anything like that. We're working with beings that have specifically have validated information and within the ritualistic context and systems, there's certain attributes to look for so that we can make sure that we're actually working with that said being. Because as Alex says frequently, spirits lie. Spirits lie. So we want to make sure that we are having as we're validating our experiences using the tools, the measurements, the guidelines that are provided within their contextual system, while also respecting those systems anthropologically, sociologically, and anachronistically, meaning we're respecting the time period in which these gods begun, arose, and the circumstances that of how people related to them in that time. So we're doing that as well. Let's see. Let me pull up my list here. We had quite a few other ones. Also,
there is a lot coming.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, Alex, do you want to cover like say like grimoire studies, for example?
Sure. Okay. So a lot of the grimoires that are associated with the Western tradition are based predominantly on, and a lot. I know a lot of people will have will take umbrage over this when I say this, but I do beg, individuals to reconsider, especially those individuals who are far more oriented towards, the Western aspect of the left-hand path. They say that the grimoires are, the go-to manuals of demonolatry, you know. But that would not exist, unfortunately, for you guys, had it not been for Catholicism. So I know that this is a tough pill to swallow, but I'm going to say it here and now. The reason why demonological pathworks exist within the Western sphere of consciousness is because it is part and parcel of esoteric Christianity. That's all. That's a tough pill to swallow, but there's that. We will go to a deep dive on how early esoteric Christianity has influenced demonology, how it has evolved independently of Christianity, where the overlaps occur, and how to more authentically work with them within the specific paradigm upon which these systems and these attributions were developed. But beyond Western grimoire magic, we also have in the works grimoire magic associated with my neck of the woods, which is Filipino folk magic. It's a different kind of magic, still influenced by Christianity, still strongly influenced by a lot of what people would consider a more Western bend of sorcery or magic, if you will, but distinctly animistic and nativistic in nature. And this course in particular, I will confidently say, is something that no one, not even people from my own country, have developed into a course that allows people from outside of the country to comprehend it and apply it in a way that, you know, they can master it in their own rights without necessarily having to be apprenticed to, or to live in the place where this specific system of magic develops. Um, in relation to that, there is also an assortment of, we can call it grimoire, but the terminology is used rather loosely here. Um, we will work with sutras. We will work with the Vedas, sutras, Upanishads, uh, and all of the lore associated with them to the best of our capacity. Now, we do not promise to be as exacting and as thorough as Cambridge or Oxford or Harvard. We would need a lot of funding for that to happen. However, we do promise to provide as much academic rigor and intellectual integrity into the work that we provide. And because the Mystery College is technically an open college, anybody, and I mean anybody, who has a greater, more profound, more thorough understanding, experience, and or knowledge about certain subject matters that we might have glanced upon, mentioned, or even attempted to promote. But maybe we fell short. Maybe there were some aspects that we missed. Please reach out to us. Come forward. Let us work with you, and we would love to work with you, because we're trying to build a community where knowledge is accessible, knowledge is free, knowledge is for everybody, and knowledge is presented in a manner which is neutral above all else, and which is easily integratable to whatever pre-existing belief or lack thereof that you already have.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Because I mean, I'm looking through. I've got my other computer here. I'm looking through the list that you guys gave me here. I mean, wow. Just on the introductory lessons, there's so much depth. Let me put myself on camera. There's so much depth in what these guys have passed over to me, and this is just the introductory things that they're going to be doing to give people a taste of how repeatable this stuff is. So you said that the things are going to be coming in the next few weeks on Zoom. You're just going to be doing things like that, and then of course we've also discussed in the next few weeks, hopefully, with the community on Perseus, where people will be able to attend your classes as well. Is there anything we're getting on for? What are we now? Over an hour now. So, is there anything else that I've missed? Because all this is new to me. I'm very much in your hands. It's all new to me, and it's very, very interesting to me. Is there anything else you would like to share before we close off?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start, and then Alex will follow. We're big fans of Perseus. I've been a part of that community. I've been a part of that community for a long time, and Alex is a newer member of that community. I'm great friends with the teachers. Everything in Perseus is highly integral. All very vetted, very, very well, incredulously. And I'm really excited to be teaching. We're really excited to be teaching live courses through Perseus, and also doubling down our engagement, our connection with Perseus, with the students at Perseus, because we're like the biggest fans. Like I've been with Perseus from pretty reasonably close to the start of it, right?
Very, very close. One of the first, yeah.
Yeah, and it's been an amazing journey, fantastic community, and and I've been a little remiss that I haven't been as engaged with the community than I could have been. But like I'm really, really excited for the upcoming community platform elements and the opportunity to connect way deeper, way further with folks through the courses for people who are currently enrolled in some of my courses and who will be enrolled in future in the courses that Alex and I are both a part of, as well as providing more Q&A, free contents, lives, and so much more. So I'm really excited for how Perseus is evolving and continuing to evolving, and both Alex and I are looking forward to a lifelong friendship with the Perseus Academy.
Oh, it was great to have you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Privilege is all ours.
And anything else from you, Alex?
Oh, Jake said it. I'm a newbie here, but I am a secret socialist at heart. So what Perseus is doing, making knowledge accessible to a lot of people, providing all of these courses from diverse assortment of teachers and practitioners. This is what knowledge could be without the gatekeeping of academia. If only academia were not so oriented in ensuring that their dons and their deans had big fat pockets. So my heart goes out to you guys and the work that you do. Thank you very much for the privilege of allowing us to work with you, and we look forward to working with you for many years to come.
Wow. Well, thank you, guys. I mean, it's a pleasure to work with Mystery Colleges. Obviously, we share the ideals. We share the idea that integrity and all the things we're doing, and to try and assist and do no harm in the way we are spreading the information. So I think this is going to be wonderful for people to have this opportunity to see things that just aren't accessible in the West. Like you say, unless it's through your local Starbucks drinking yoga teacher, this kind of thing that you guys are talking about, the depth, the as you say, the cohesiveness of these systems is people don't know what they don't know about these subjects. So basically in the next few weeks you're going to see the opportunity to sign up with Jake and Alex and the Mystery College to start going through these teachings. Very soon you'll see similar opportunity with the release of the Perseus community. And I think as well, there's so much to go into here. We're going to do some more videos or some more interviews in some shape or form to, go into some of the backstories a little bit and to give people as much as we can. But I think this is a great first video to introduce Alex to the Perseus audience and to go a little bit deeper into Jake as well. Because obviously we know you from the Evocation Masterclass and the other masterclasses that you have for initiation and the Kabbalah. But there's so much more. I mean, just even with your family history there, that's quite a perspective to have, seeing those things as a youngster. So, guys, I'd like to thank you very much, for spending this time with Perseus. We'll close it off there. Stay on the line. We'll have a quick chat afterwards. And for everyone that's been watching this episode of Perseus Conversations, thank you very, very much. There's more on the way. And please like, subscribe, and please do leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you would like to hear more from Alex and Jake. Any questions you have, put them down below and we'll do our best to answer them. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.